going to move on to our next presentation. Now, just before I do, as a reminder, our final workshops of this year's summit will be starting in 10 minutes on track 7 and 8, and they are Solve Real-World AI for Good Challenges, Learn AI by Applying it in Practice, led by Fruit Punch and AI's Future, and its long-term effects on future generations, led by the Software Improvement Group. Get there early to book your places because they risk to be very, very busy. Now, we're going to lead on now to our final presentation here before the afternoon break. And it's about solving an audacious problem starts by asking the right questions. We're super disappointed that our speaker can't be with us personally, but he's connected virtually from California. Our next guest is the founder of several successful companies, including Moon Express, Blue Dot, Viome, Intellius, TalentWise, and InfoSpace. Please put your hands together for Naveen Jain. Naveen, it's so good to have you with us connected here today for this World Summit AI. Firstly, how are you doing? I know it's very early where you are right now.
Well, actually, I wake up at 4 a.m., so this is almost a midday for me. But I'm really disappointed not to be there, and I wish I was there with you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. So let's take it away. Firstly, how did your personal experience lead you to start Viome, a company that uses AI to offer its customers an accessible way to understand basically what's going on in their bodies through at-home microbiome tests? What were some of the key insights or turning points that motivated you to do that?
Well, in any journey, any entrepreneurial journey, there are always the personal reasons why you get so obsessed about solving the problem. So let me start by saying that welcome to World Summit AI, and you are all very fortunate to be listening to the new era of AI, where it's going to fundamentally change the trajectory of how humanity is going to live. We are all so lucky and fortunate to be alive, to be living in this era. There are more changes that are going to be coming in the next decade than we saw in the last century. So we should all be thinking about how to use AI that will actually not only impact the humanity positively, but think about the big ideas. It's no longer about you have to be able to have a large team and a small idea. Now it's about having a small team and a large idea. And I'm going to show you how you can do that and how it's possible today that has never been possible before. So anytime you start any company, ask yourself 3 questions. Why this? Why now? Why me? Why this is a really simple thing. You ask yourself, God forbid I'm actually successful in solving the problem that I set out to solve. Would it help 1 billion people live a better life? Right. And the reason you do that is because anytime you can build any product, any service that helps 1 billion people live a better life, you can create a massive $100 billion enterprise. That means it is a capitalist thing to do. It's not just a philanthropic thing to do. Making money is simply a byproduct of doing things that improve people's lives. Right? That why now is really this decade where you are able to solve. So you ask yourself a simple question. What had changed in the last couple of years, but more importantly, what do you expect to change in the next 3 to 5 years that will allow you to solve the problem at scale in 3 to 5 years? And this problem could not have been solved 5 years ago. That means you are taking advantage of the technology and intercepting it in 3 to 5 years, rather than using yesterday's technology to solve tomorrow's problem. You're using tomorrow's technology to solve tomorrow's problem, right? And the last part of this thing is why me? Why me is what questions are you asking that are different from what everyone else in the industry is asking? Because the questions you ask is the problem you solve. So if you say, I want to solve a world hunger problem, and every expert will tell you to solve a world hunger, you have to learn to increase the yield of the crop, because there are 8 billion people. One day we're going to have 10 billion people or 20 billion people. How are we going to feed so many people? You have to grow more food. You have to reduce the wastage of food. but nobody will ever ask a question. And what if you were to ask, why do we eat food? By simply asking the question, why we eat food, you realize the only reason to eat food is energy and nutrition. And suddenly you realize how many different ways can we get energy. Can we get energy like plants do from photosynthesis? Can we get energy like some of the bacteria that grow in the radioactive nuclear waste using radiation as a source of energy? But the point I'm trying to make is that fundamentally, by asking a different questions, you open up the possibilities that have never been opened before. Now, to answer your question specifically, when I started Viome, it started with a very tough personal journey. My dad was diagnosed with a stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and he was given 3 months to live. And unfortunately, that's all he got. And it really got me thinking that why is it that we could not actually ever diagnose that he had a cancer when it was early and we could have done something about it. But more importantly, he was early 80s. And I just took it for granted that as he was aging, he is going to have diabetes. He is going to have high blood pressure. He's going to have a heart disease. He's going to have all these symptoms that we just associate with aging. And I start thinking, what is it about humanity that had changed in the last 100 years? We are still the same Homo sapiens from hundreds of thousands of years ago. We as Homo sapiens haven't really changed, yet younger and younger people are getting more and more of these chronic diseases. And what if? And every large idea starts with what if? What if we can actually understand what changes in the human body at the onset of these chronic diseases? And if we can understand exactly what is changing in the human body, we'll be able to prevent the diseases from happening, we'll be able to diagnose them early, and God forbid, outright reverse them. And that is what started our journey by asking a different question. So while everyone in the industry was focused on wanting to understand your genes, they wanted to know your DNA. And it occurred to us that DNA never changes when you become diabetic. So you do my DNA test, and then I gain 200 pounds. My DNA still hasn't changed. Then I become diabetic. Then I have a heart disease. Then I have a depression. And then I die. And your DNA never changes, even if you were to look at my DNA 100 years after I die. So DNA can't even tell you you're dead or alive, let alone are you healthier or sicker. And that got us thinking, what is it that changes? And it turns out it is your gene expression or your RNA that changes. So we focused on understanding your RNA. And the second part was really 99% of all of our genes that are expressed in our body don't come from our mom and dad. They come from these microbes that live inside our gut, live inside our mouth, and all over us. 100 trillion microbes. And it turns out these 100 trillion microbes are not parasites. They have a symbiotic relationship with us. And we are a super organism consisting of 100 trillion microbes and 20,000 human genes, right? And that is what makes us who we are. And every single disease, if you were to look at today, whether it is Parkinson's, Alzheimer, whether it is cancer, or whether it is diabetes or obesity or heart disease, they're all connected to how microbes are interacting with the human immune system and causing these different diseases to happen. So essentially what we ended up doing was we started a company that actually analyzes your saliva, analyzes your stool, analyzes your finger prick blood at home, and taking at 30 million of these biomarkers in the transcripts, we are now able to identify early stage 1 and stage 0 cancer. We are able to tell you exactly what your biological age is, what your cognitive health is, your heart health, your gut health. And then we are able to tell you exactly what foods to eat and why, what foods not to eat and why, what are the nutrients you need, and we custom make those supplements just for you. But more importantly, what I'm really proud of is, and in the memory of my dad, that we are not only able to diagnose this disease early, just with using the food as a medicine and the customized supplement, we actually published a paper that shows within 6 months, you are able to reduce your IBS by 49%, your anxiety by 42%, your depression by 47%, your diabetes by 30%. And that to me is someone who does not come from a science background or a medical background or any of the background that was needed. It was my biggest asset. So to sum up the answer, every one of you who's listening to it probably saying, I know nothing about it. How am I going to solve this problem? And what I'm here to tell you is not knowing about it is your biggest asset. It is not about having knowledge, because once you become an expert, you become an incrementalist. You become 10% better than someone else. But to be 10 times better, you have to ask a different question. And it's not about simply having a passion for solving a problem. Passion is for hobbies. I have passion for collecting space rocks. That's a passion. My obsession is to solve the healthcare problem. In other words, passion is for losers and people who truly solve audacious ideas. They have obsession, not obsession for people, not obsession for things, obsession to solve a problem. So go out and find your true obsession. And once you find that, you'll be able to solve audacious challenges.
So it's all about staying curious, if you will. But, as an entrepreneur, how have you cultivated intellectual curiosity and an audacious mindset in your workforce, but also your children? What specific strategies or even approaches would you or have you found to be effective?
Well, first of all, really good question. If children don't do what you tell them to do, they do what they see you do. So what kind of role model are you becoming for your children? So if you make a decent amount of money and you say, look, now this is probably, I shouldn't be saying in Europe, because Europe is a completely different mindset here. If you say, oh, I'm going to now spend time with my young children because I have sufficient financial stability, so I'm going to spend time with my children. But that is really the most selfish thing you do at the cost of destroying your children's future. And the reason I'm using these provocative words is just want you to think about it for a second from a children's perspective. When children are going to school, they see you sitting at home watching CNBC. When you come back, when they come back from school, they see the dad is sitting on the sofa watching CNBC. And you tell them, go work hard. Hard work is what it takes. Go to your room, finish your homework. And they're thinking, I want to grow up just like my dad, sitting on the sofa and watching CNBC. Instead, this dad, having a great financial success with my first company that went on to become a $40 billion company, dad did not sit at home. Dad started the second company and the third company and the fourth company and said, now we're going to go to the moon. Dad, nobody has done that. Here we are, became the first company to get permission to leave Earth orbit. We got the law changed and signed by President Obama that anything we bring back, we get to own it. We became one of the 6 companies to get $2.6 billion NASA contract. And I know nothing about aerospace, so you know, right? And the dad goes crazy. Now we're going to solve. Dad turns 60, and dad is going to solve the healthcare problem. By the way, I'm 65 now, right? My biologically have come down to 33. But the point I'm trying to make is so I have 3 children, 33, 30, and 27. My 33-year-old started a company called Built. That's a unicorn. So if you were to Google Ankur Jain, he's not only a young World Economic Forum, YGL, Young Global Leader for the World Economic Forum. His company is worth over $3.5 billion. My daughter, so he went to Wharton. My daughter went to Stanford. She's a Stanford STEM fellow, Stanford Mayfield fellow. First company, she started using using AI to remove gender bias. And now she started the second company, the Women's Health Company. That's another unicorn that is about eliminating the gender gap in women's health, right? Because women weren't even allowed to be in clinical research. And many of the women, when you take a drug, it was never tested on women. It rarely works on women. Even they're diagnosed 7 to 10 years later, the same disease that can be diagnosed early in the men, because they were completely eliminated from the healthcare system. So she's out there to solve a massive problem. Our youngest one went to Stanford, became a Schwarzman Scholar, and he is also running a unicorn. So now what is it that we did? We created an intellectual curiosity. Our job as a parent was never to take them to the water and make them drink. Our job was to make them thirsty. And the way you make them thirsty, to create the intellectual curiosity. So you basically ask them to challenge everything. So if I know you want to ask me a question, so I'll stop here.
No, you're a fantastic role model, and it's really fascinating to hear you say how you managed to do it and giving some great advice. But what about in the workplace? How do you foster a culture of curiosity and willingness,
Absolutely.
especially in this period of artificial intelligence? And it becomes even more and more prevalent in the workplace. What are some potential pitfalls to avoid, sorry?
So one thing is really, again, asking the different question, allowing your employees and children to challenge everything that they take it for granted. So for example, if your child says, Dad, look at the beautiful blue sky. You don't say, yep, that's extremely beautiful. You actually allow them to think, do you know the sky doesn't really exist? Sky is nothing but a figment of your imagination because it's just a scattered blue light that exists, and we think there is a barrier called sky. And by the way, there is a blue color is simply made up in your mind. There is no color out there. It is simply the electromagnetic waves that hit our retina, and our mind actually makes up this color. Right? The dogs may not see the same color, the bat may not see the same color, the rats may not see the same color. The color is simply made up in our mind. And the reason you do that is for the children and your employees to learn that everything that they even see with their own eye may or may not be right. Something they learn to challenge everything. What if it was not right? What if you could think about it from a different perspective? What if you can actually challenge that it is not right? What would you do with that? And that's the kind of things is allowing people to come up with the stories that have never been told before. How do you connect the dots that have never been connected before? And that is the trick. Whether you're using AI, it's about prompting, and that's the same thing about in the real world is you essentially learn to ask the different question. That's the prompt, because that's how the children learn to answer the different questions.
Thank you. We have 4 minutes remaining for questions
Sure.
and answers. Do we have any questions from the audience at all? Any questions for our guest speaker? Yes, sir. We have a question from this gentleman over here. Oh, you can shout it. Not sure who'd be able to hear you in California, though.
Hi. This is Arup. We're from actually Hamburg. I've been to a couple of talks so far now. So this was like the most inspiring so far. And I'm really, really glad that I just came in and didn't even know the track was going on. So thank you so much to Inspire. And I'm also an entrepreneur and coming from very different background, getting into AI and working on AI. So my question is very simple question that you said, like if you don't know a subject and you get in and then you ask the question that basically the engineers or subject matter expert wouldn't ask, and you look at it in a different perspective, right? And you explore that. But then the next challenge come in, how you convince yourself and you know that you are asking the right question, but you still do need the team, do need the buy-in of a lot of people, right? And I'm talking about, let's say somebody really coming from underdog situation, right? So the buy-in is the kind of make or break situation. So how do you go about and do the buy-in and make other people convinced that you are in the right path and they should come along and help you to get there?
So first of all, there are several underlying questions. Is when you are outside the industry, how do you convince other people to join you as a team so that you are able to actually solve the problem? So first of all, you do need experts, but your job as an entrepreneur is to challenge their thinking. So so every time the experts will come with the ideas, and your job is to say, why can't it be done differently? Why can't it be done this way? And the first answer they will tell you is because it will never work, because that's not how things work. And your question to say is, why not? So once you start to act like a 2-year-old, ask 3 whys. So if you don't have a 2-year-old, I'm going to explain it to you. Every time mom and dad say something, they say, but why? And then you answer them and say, but why? And then you say, but why? And once you get the 3 whys, you get to the root cause of what is the problem. And I can tell you that by simply asking why not, when they say it won't work, I say, why not? and they start explaining, and then he said, well, I still don't understand, why can't we do it this way? And then suddenly they come to their own conclusion, oh my God, let me try it and see if it works. And they come back and say, I can't believe it actually works, right? And the second thing is, in terms of getting the right people to do, it's about coming up with an idea that has a potential to become a legacy idea. So that means when I started at Viome, I had no background in the things. But guess what? I was able to show them that if we are successful in solving this problem, this will not only become their legacy, this can change the humanity. So I was able to attract the best and the brightest, because the best and the brightest wants to work on the toughest problems, and the people who are successful, they want to become significant. And if you give them a problem that makes them significant, they're willing to take a chance at you to solve that audacious problem. It is easier to solve an audacious idea than to take a small idea, because not only you get a great team, every investor wants to invest in you because they know if you're successful, they're going to have a massive enterprise in their hand. So go out and think so big that people think you're crazy, and never be afraid to fail, because you only fail when you give up.
Yeah, right. Round of applause for Naveen Jain. Talk about a motivational session there. I mean, right? Me too, me too. So much energy. It was fantastic to get the opportunity to sit and have this fireside chat with you, Naveen, Jain. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for connecting with us here at World Summit AI. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for Naveen Jain. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.